About the party first, yeah.
The party came second.
Oh, the party came second.
Right, thank you very much indeed. It's absolutely delightful for me to be able to speak to you and through you to the audience in South Africa, so that they've got a picture of what is taking place in Namibia, and also have a picture of what the Independent Patriots for Change is and its origins, but more so importantly, why I am involved in it and why I've chosen to seek an alternative to the current governing structures in Namibia in terms of the political party of the SWAPO government. I am a Namibian, and I was born in Namibia, and I went to school in Namibia, grown up in the capital where I was born, and went to secondary schools in the 80s, in the 70s, as was the case at that time, radicalized by the apartheid system sort of oppression against our people. And we were also part of the resistance that burned down schools in Namibia in 76 and 78, and subsequent to that, obviously, being imprisoned and tortured. And later on,
So for how long?
a little town called Uis. That was my first experience of that. And then later on, arrested at the then SWAPO of Namibia headquarters in the capital in 1979 then, and then held in Windhoek, and then tortured in Windhoek, and later on transferred to a prison in the east of the country, in a place called Hobabes, where we were, or rather I met quite strong, powerful people of convictions in the prison, also members of the SWAPO of Namibia, the liberation movement. Then, of course, there's a distinction between SWAPO of Namibia and SWAPO Party. SWAPO Party is the governing post-independence organization, and SWAPO of Namibia involved quite a lot of people with the conviction to liberate Namibia. And we were 86 of us in prison at that time. And we were not allowed any visits during that time either. And at the same time, we were transferred later on to the main prison in Windhoek, and where we were held in single cells, each of us, with a hole in the bottom as a toilet, and of course, a little bit of an opening up for refreshment, but for fresh air, but it was very, very hot. And later on, we were released under conditions of house arrest, where we were not allowed to be in the presence of more than 5 people, or to really leave the house between 6 and 8 o'clock in the morning, and also not to receive visitors whatsoever without the permission of the South African police, and also not to leave the location of Katutura, where we mostly, all of us, used to be resident into town, and we will do so with permission for a specific place and for a specific determined time, and also not to leave the municipal area of Windhoek to go into any town at all without permission. And later on, we were placed on a targeted to be eliminated by the enemy at that time, and that's how the church stepped in to get out of the country and send us out to the United Kingdom, where I went and spent some time studying, of course involved in the liberation struggle. And we used to address meetings with your late leader Aziz Pahat in London, and I remember in 1986 addressing a meeting after also the death of the then Mozambican leader, 4 billion Moses Michel. So we need to reduce the government spending in order for us to actually grow our economy. And we are proposing to reduce the ministries from 24 to 15, and also making sure that we don't have deputy ministers. We are also proposing
24 to 50.
Yes, throughout that period of 33 years in the United Kingdom, I acquired no citizenship of any other country. I retained the same citizenship. And of course, at that time, we all traveled under the South African passport. Even late Bishop Tutu would have traveled under the South African, the Alan Busaks, etc., and also our Bishop Kaulumas in Namibia as well. So I maintained the Namibian citizenship without acquiring anything at all, because my loyalty to my people was absolutely unquestionable. And when I returned to Namibia, my first task was to find out exactly what was this Namibia. And I was returning to a country that is now independent, albeit a negotiated settlement, but it's a country which was strange to me now. And my first task was to travel around the country to understand our people once again and to understand what independence meant for many of them. And every time that I asked the question, I got a different answer. And independence meant quite a lot of different things to a lot of people. To one of my friends who was working in the ministries then, independence to him was to be able to live in a posh suburb with his child going to a private school and he's got a car. But to an old lady who was collecting water in the northern regions, is the freedom to be able to get out of a house without a curfew, without any soldiers around her, to go and just fetch water from the canal. That was the freedom. But to many of the people in the country, independence didn't change much of their lives. And to date, many of the majority of our people did not change that. It's when I realized that there was a lot of wrongs in the governing party now, which has now been transformed to the SWAPO party, that their internal systems were rigged, elections were rigged, that at the time, I was the chairperson of the one of the contestants for the vice presidency in 2017. That's when I realized that things are not right at home, as it were. And I decided then that no, this is not how it's going to go. And then I wrote something called...
Sorry, in 2017.
2017, yeah.
Yeah.
I then wrote, and that is after having traveled extensively throughout the whole country. And I was never in the government of the independent Namibia, neither was I in the governing structures of the political party now, SWAPO party. So when I came back, they thought, oh, let's get him to support us and to work with us. So I was then working with the person who was contesting for the vice presidency of the party. And that's when I realized that things are not right. And I wrote something called the Independent Presidential Candidate, a document there. And that's when the idea of a new political party came into existence. Now, I was the Independent Presidential Candidate, IPC, but we needed, and I campaigned under the banner of Namibia, Uniting Namibians. And it was necessary for us to find a political home for everybody that is reflective of the needs of every single Namibian, not look on partisan or whether anybody was in exile or somebody was actually tortured or anything like that. And we came together, not physically, but we communicated through social media, the 6 of us, and decided we are going to form the Independent Patriots for Change. But we had a number of names that were proposed.
So when you say the 6 of us, who were the...
Well, it was mainly myself and Patriot Kangulu, Aloysius Kangulu, and Patriot Emmanuel Nashinge, and Patriot Franz Tapopi, and 2 others that I as yet not revealed to anybody, notwithstanding.
So, but what were they? What were they?
They were independent presidential candidate, not people that I worked with before in any form or whatever. It was just during that the supporters and people who have actually been just following me and who came together and said, no, what are we going to do? Let's get something going. But then at that time I was adamant that no, we are not going to form a political party, because my convictions at that time were still within the principles that guided the SWAPO party. But I came to the realization that those principles are not being followed by the SWAPO party leadership. Because in SWAPO of Namibia, albeit that I may not have been aware of it, we didn't have looters, we didn't have thieves, we didn't have corrupt individuals. But at independence, a lot of those principles were thrown away. Solidarity, freedom, and unity didn't exist there. So it was critically important at that time to seek an alternative political home, which we then did in putting together a constitution and examining the defects in other constitutions and trying to unite all the Namibian people in that constitution. And we then had our founding convention on the 2nd of August 2020. And that was 3 months before the conduct of the local and regional elections for the local government, of course, and regional governments, which is the first time that we actually participated in contestation for governance, as it were. And we did pretty well. The party came second, and we have been able to capture quite a lot of positions around the country, to the extent that we are now the authority in the southern towns of Oranjemund on the coast, Ludrets, Walvis Bay, and Swakopmund. And we have got presence of our local authorities, about 67 of them, in local governments around the country. And in the northern parts of the country, out of every 7 councillors, 3 of them are IPC members. And that is something that we actually achieved within 3 months of campaigning, or 3 months of educating the Namibian people as well. And within the capital itself, which consists of 15 councillors, 4 of them are IPC, and of course the ruling party has got the 5 and the others has got 2, 2, 1, 1. And that is quite an achievement in a population of now 490,000 in the capital itself. But we continue to grow as a significant force within Namibian politics, but of course hampered in our execution of our social services duties to our people by the fact that the central government still controls the budget and certain allocations to the local authorities. So we are hamstrings, and we're hamstrings over the 4 years in order for us to actually carry that out. And again, local authorities are not the expression of party policies, because local authorities are creature of parliament, and they are therefore subject to what the legislation says as their duties, which are already prescribed. So there isn't anything new there. And the reason why we don't have employment in our country is because we don't have the businesses to be able to employ people. And we don't have businesses to employ people because our tax regime is simply too high at 32, 31, 32%. And so the first thing that we are proposing is we want to ensure that Namibians can be employed, and the only way that we can create employment is to make sure that we create an environment conducive to businesses coming into Namibia. And that will require us, as we propose, to reduce the tax regime to 22. And by so doing, 22%.
Okay.
Yeah, by so doing, it means that the companies will be able to accumulate enough profit to either invest in the company again or to dish it out as dividends. Now we know that in order for us to actually indirectly ask them to invest in the country, we introduce a tax dividend as well, that if you were to make a profit of 100 million, at the moment the government takes 32 million and you go away with 68 million. But if you were to come into the new regime, we will tax you at 22, you take away 78. But if you reinvest that in your company, we know that you will grow your company and you will employ more people into the company itself. So more people will come out of the unemployment list as well. But if you don't do that and share out that as dividends, we are going to be applying a dividend tax of 10%. Instead of taking 78, you'll be taking 70.2% to share out amongst them. Because what we need to do is to make sure that we get more people in jobs, and more people in jobs will be able to get salaries, they will be able to put bread on the table for their families, they will contribute in the process as well to our VAT regime, so our revenue collection will increase. This year alone, the government collected 19.739 billion from 19.739 billion from personal taxes alone, the pay as you earn, as it were. And if we were to double the workforce, that will also double, and we'll have more money in our revenue coffers to make sure that we will be able to implement. Many of the people that are unemployed are basically young people. And this is what is the most painful. People, young children who've got no future at all. They've got no prospects of a job, no prospect of actually enjoying their life where they're still in their early stages of their life. So what we are proposing is that will ensure that at least 80% of those young people coming out of education institutions are employed meaningfully in either the government or within the private sector. But for us to allow them to be employed in the private sector, we need to provide an incentive to ensure that these private companies will be able to offer jobs and skill and train these people. So we are also proposing the ministers to be given a decent salary, and then they can buy their own cars. At the moment you get 4 cars, which is a lot of taxpayers' money,
Sure.
and that has to go. So there's quite a lot of policy that we need to. The second thing that we need to do. So employment is very important because that will contribute to our consumer market. It will contribute to our GDP. Reducing the government is also important. But the second most important thing is housing. We've got something like 300,000 Namibians housing units required. 900,000 or more of our people live in informal settlements. A country of 3 million, that's unacceptable. Almost a third of our people haven't got sanitation, water, and a proper environment to bring up their children. So we are going to concentrate heavily on housing for our people as well. It's an important component of it, and it gives security to the people as well. Many of the proposals that we are putting forward will of course depend on the margin of mandate that we get from the Namibian people in order for us to implement without having to negotiate with anyone else. We need at least over 49 of the seats in the 96 chambers for us to be able to pass the laws. So we need a massive mandate from the people, which we've got no doubt we will get, to be able to actually change the entire system. So we are confident that we have got what it takes to be able to take the power from the SWAPO and to be able to get the mandate from the people as well. It's not something that we planned yesterday or something like that. It's coming a long way. We had 30 months of strategic planning. What we started off with, including the recruitment of members to the party, is also education of the members of the party. And we went into encouraging the Namibian people as soon as the government proclamation was released that people will be having an election. We encouraged the people to go out and register. And then we launched our manifesto, and then we launched our members of parliament at the same time as well. And then we now are launching only 3 main events in the whole of Namibia: go out and register, go out and vote. So we are now in the last stretches of that. And all over Namibia, in every town almost, there's been events of drive-thrus in the towns, encouraging people to go out and vote. And those have been spearheaded by many of the young people in the country. I was actually taken aback, although not surprised, that we no longer have to be in the country. I no longer have to be in a town for people to go up and encourage others to go and vote. The people are taking it. It's a revolution. People are now marching on their own, with their own steam, as it were, under the banner of IPC. But as I said earlier on, I've addressed meetings with Aziz Pahat in the United Kingdom. I cannot deny that history, but it doesn't mean that I should be able adhering to the policies that the ANC is pursuing inside this country. But when we come to SADC, then we are sovereign states that will have to have mutual respect for each other and act within the interests of our people. Our people are innocent in what the individual political party leaders are conducting themselves as. We are not saying that we will be able to embrace thieves and corrupt leaders. We will not do that.